The strongest people are often the quietest. You may have noticed them, the ones who never feel the need to prove themselves, who let others speak first, who remain unshaken when the world presses hard. There is a story of a Taoist sage who wandered from village to village, carrying nothing but a small satchel and a serene calm that seemed to ripple through the air around him. One day, two villagers came to argue over a border dispute, voices sharp and eyes burning with anger. Rather than respond with words, the sage simply smiled and walked away, his presence alone dissolving the tension. By refusing to engage, he did not surrender. He preserved his inner balance while the others, consumed by conflict, exhausted themselves. This is the paradox of strength. Yielding is not weakness, it is mastery. In the Western imagination, strength is measured by confrontation, by the ability to dominate, to insist, to push until resistance bends. But Taoist philosophy asks us to look deeper. It asks us to consider the invisible power of flexibility, the subtle force of non-resistance that moves around obstacles rather than crashing against them. When we yield, we align with the flow of life rather than against it, allowing situations to resolve themselves without surrendering our integrity. The sage's silence was not passivity. It was a deliberate act of power. Think about your own life. How often have you felt compelled to argue, to defend, to assert your perspective, only to find yourself drained and unsettled afterward? That tension is the cost of fighting when fighting is unnecessary. The Taoist teaches that by stepping aside, by letting the current carry the moment, you conserve your energy and often achieve outcomes that confrontation never could. There's a strange kind of courage in letting go, a quiet audacity in trusting that yielding can accomplish more than force ever will. Yielding transforms not only how others respond to you, but how you respond to yourself. It shifts identity from a person trapped in the need to be right to someone grounded in awareness, patience, and timing. And here lies the question that lingers. If strength can be silent, if power can move through gentleness, how might your life change if you stopped resisting and began yielding? The paradox challenges everything we are taught about strength, yet those who embrace it discover a freedom that arguments, fights, and constant assertion can never provide. In the calm of yielding, the true force of character emerges quietly, inevitably, and unopposed. Walk along a riverbank and watch carefully. The water does not fight the rocks. It does not demand obedience from the land. It flows around, over, and through, carving paths not by force, but by persistence. Over time, it shapes canyons, hollows valleys, and smooths stone into something almost gentle. Consider the oak tree, rigid and proud, facing a storm with unbending defiance, and the bamboo, slender and flexible, bowing to every gust. The oak may splinter, the bamboo may bend, but it returns upright, resilient, unbroken. Taoist sages observed these truths not merely as poetry, but as guidance. They saw that the soft endures where the hard collapses, that yielding can be stronger than resisting, and that patience carries a quiet but undeniable force. This is not just the world of rivers and trees. It is the world of human experience. How often have we resisted change, clung to old ideas, or confronted challenges with rigid pride, only to find ourselves exhausted, frustrated, or broken? Life, like the wind, tests us with storms we cannot always control. Yet, like water flowing over stone, or bamboo bending without breaking, we discover that flexibility allows us to endure and even thrive. In relationships, yielding does not mean surrender. It means listening, adapting, and understanding the rhythm of others without losing our essence. In work, persistence outweighs impulsive force, patience cultivates mastery, and small, consistent actions achieve more than desperate attempts to dominate. Every moment of yielding becomes a quiet investment in resilience, a compound effect that reveals its power only over time. Visualize the river again. It does not rush, it does not resist, yet it wears down the mountains, shaping the world in ways no single act of violence could achieve. The Taoists name this principle the soft overcoming the hard, the weak conquering the strong. It is a law written in the very fabric of nature, repeated in every bamboo grove, every flowing stream, every patient wind shaping the dunes. By observing and internalizing this law, we shift our perspective. Strength is no longer the roar, the argument, the clash. Strength becomes subtle, patient, and adaptive. We see opportunity in restraint, strategy in waiting, and power in yielding rather than pushing. Ask yourself, in your life, where are you resisting when you could yield? Where are you standing rigid when flexibility could serve you better? The Taoist masters did not offer this wisdom as abstract theory. They lived it, flowing through the currents of life with the ease and quiet authority of water. To emulate them is to embrace the hidden power of patience, to allow soft persistence to shape outcomes more profoundly than blunt confrontation ever could. In a world that celebrates force, the Taoist way reminds us that enduring strength is rarely loud. It is subtle, enduring, and everywhere in the lessons of nature, waiting for those willing to observe and learn. Sun Tzu, centuries ago, wrote in The Art of War, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." At first, it seems counterintuitive. How can one win by not confronting, by stepping aside instead of charging forward? Yet this principle lies at the heart of Taoist philosophy and its approach to conflict. Consider arguments at work or at home. How often do we expend energy insisting we are right, escalating tension, only to find ourselves frustrated, exhausted, or alienated? What if yielding rather than resisting could achieve far more than confrontation ever could? The sages teach that yielding does not mean surrender. It is a deliberate strategy, a conscious choice to redirect energy rather than clash with it. Martial arts provide a living illustration. In Tai Chi or Aikido, practitioners do not rely on brute strength. Instead, they absorb, guide, and redirect an opponent's force. A punch or a push meets not rigid resistance, but flowing movement, turning aggression into harmony, force into leverage. One small, yielding gesture can neutralize a threat, not through struggle, but through understanding and alignment. This is the quiet power of yielding. It preserves energy, prevents unnecessary conflict, and creates clarity in moments of tension. When we apply this to arguments, negotiations, or interpersonal challenges, we find the same principle holds. Listening, adapting, and occasionally stepping back often opens pathways that force could never reveal. Imagine your last heated debate, the one that left your chest tight and your thoughts scattered. What if, instead of pushing harder, you had paused, observed, and allowed the conversation to flow? What if you had redirected the energy rather than opposing it? The result might have been astonishing. The other person could have arrived at their own understanding, leaving both of you calmer, more aligned, and unexpectedly closer. This is not hypothetical. Countless examples in leadership, diplomacy, and daily life demonstrate that yielding can shift outcomes far beyond what rigid insistence can accomplish. It is not weakness. It is strategy, patience, and insight combined. In the modern world, resistance often feels natural. We are trained to defend, assert, and fight for our position. Yet those who embrace yielding discover an invisible advantage. By letting go of immediate impulses, by refusing to be drawn into reactive patterns, they conserve energy, maintain clarity, and often guide conflicts to resolution effortlessly. This approach transforms not only outcomes, but identity. No longer are we trapped as reactive participants in every argument. We become masters of flow, tacticians of calm, wielding influence through presence rather than force. The challenge remains. Can you trust that yielding will accomplish more than confrontation? Can you embrace the subtle art of allowing, redirecting, and letting go? In the next section, the real-life transformations that emerge from this practice will become unmistakably clear, revealing a power that is quietly irresistible. In our modern world, the pressures of relationships, workplaces, and leadership roles often push us toward confrontation, defense, and constant assertion. Yet the Taoist principle of yielding, quiet, and subtle remains as relevant today as it was centuries ago. Consider the colleague who interrupts every meeting or the partner who challenges every suggestion. Our instinct is to counter, to defend, to prove our point. But what if yielding, rather than resisting, could create far more influence, clarity, and harmony? Modern psychology suggests it can. Research in emotional regulation shows that when we pause, listen, without immediately countering, and allow our ego to relax, we respond more strategically and maintain cognitive control. This is not passive surrender. It is deliberate mastery, an ability to navigate conflict while conserving energy and maintaining composure. Think of leaders who have mastered this art. Nelson Mandela, for example, spent decades under imprisonment, yet chose negotiation and understanding over retaliation, transforming enemies into allies and preserving his moral authority. In corporate settings, CEOs who prioritize listening and selective engagement often outperform those who fight every battle. Their secret is yielding. They recognize which conflicts merit energy and which are best absorbed, redirected, or left alone. Similarly, in everyday life, yielding transforms relationships. A parent listening to a frustrated child without immediate correction, a partner choosing to pause rather than escalate, or a friend resisting the urge to argue online demonstrates the same principle at work. The results are remarkable. Reduced tension, stronger bonds, and outcomes that rigid resistance could never achieve. Modern psychology supports these ancient insights with measurable evidence. Studies on non-defensive communication, active listening, and emotional regulation show that people who yield strategically are perceived as more competent, trustworthy, and influential. Their calm presence lowers defensive responses in others, creating collaboration instead of conflict. The brain's mirror neurons amplify this effect, meaning that when we respond with patience rather than aggression, we invite cooperation and understanding. This is the hidden leverage of yielding. It changes not only our actions, but the responses of those around us, often without a single argument. Applying these lessons requires both awareness and practice. Start by observing your own reactions. When you feel the urge to counter or defend, pause. Ask yourself if this battle matters, if your energy is best spent here, or if you can redirect it more effectively. Listen fully, allowing silence to create space for insight. Let your ego relax, recognizing that insisting on being right rarely changes minds, but often diminishes influence. Choose your battles strategically, reserving force for situations where action is essential, and using yielding as a tool to navigate the rest. Small, deliberate steps compound, building not only emotional intelligence, but the quiet authority that others instinctively respect. Imagine the consequences of ignoring these principles. How many arguments escalate unnecessarily? How often do opportunities slip away because of rigid resistance? Every time we react impulsively, we trade long-term influence for short-term validation. Yet by practicing yielding, we reclaim control, clarity, and the ability to guide outcomes. This mastery transforms identity, from a reactive participant trapped in conflict to a composed strategist, moving through life with intention. The power of yielding is subtle, but it is also profound. Those who embrace it discover a freedom others rarely experience, the freedom to act with precision, respond with insight, and navigate relationships, work, and life with a calm authority that is both rare and irresistible. It is here in the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science that we find a skill that changes not only outcomes, but who we are. Yielding is not surrender, it is mastery, and those who cultivate it gain an advantage that the world often overlooks, but deeply respects. We return now to the image of the sage, the quiet monk who moves through the world unshaken, untouched by arguments or conflict. He does not push, he does not insist, yet he exerts a presence that commands respect simply by being. There is a lesson here that transcends time. True strength is not measured by volume, by dominance, or by the force of one's words. True strength lies in yielding, strategically, consciously, without surrendering self or truth. How often have we mistaken noise for power, believing that arguing, insisting, or proving ourselves grants authority? The sage reminds us that calm, deliberate yielding achieves outcomes far beyond what confrontation ever could, preserving both energy and integrity. Yielding is not passive. It is a skill, a mastery that allows us to navigate life with clarity. In relationships, it transforms tension into understanding, frustration into dialogue. In the workplace, it shifts conflicts from battles to solutions, opening doors that rigid insistence often closes. In personal growth, it builds patience and emotional resilience, teaching us to conserve energy for moments that truly matter. The act of bending without breaking is not compromise. It is strategic alignment with reality, a recognition that force is often wasted where flexibility succeeds. Practicing strategic yielding begins with awareness. Notice the moments when your instinct is to resist. Ask whether this battle matters, whether energy can be redirected more effectively. Listen without countering, allowing insight to emerge from silence. Let go of the compulsion to assert at every opportunity, choosing instead to preserve your strength for moments that require decisive action. With time, these small, deliberate practices compound, producing a quiet authority that others sense intuitively. People are drawn not to the loudest voice, but to the one that moves with calm confidence, the presence that bends, yet does not break. Remember this: the sage does not argue, therefore no one can argue with him. He bends, but does not break. In embracing yielding, we reclaim mastery over ourselves and our circumstances. We discover that restraint is not weakness, patience is not inaction, and silence often speaks more powerfully than words. By walking the sage's way, we learn to move through life with grace, strategy, and quiet influence, leaving behind the exhausting cycle of conflict and stepping into a strength that is subtle, profound, and enduring.